Aging Joyfully. I have been thinking quite a bit about making this video about my story with alcohol. I think it's a pretty common story that most people in America have. I grew up in Chicago and I don't really remember my first time of drinking. I think probably my parents gave me a sip of, my mom would love Tom Collins, and maybe she'd let me get a sip of that when I was a kid. They only drank really on Saturday nights, maybe a little on Friday, but overall it wasn't a day-to-day thing. I think that's the big difference in drinking then and drinking today. Today, I think that drinking is more encouraged on a daily basis, whereas then they really only drank on Saturday nights for the most part. Then when I was about almost 14, we moved to Indiana, and I remember spending the night at my best friend's house. So at 14, she gave me alcohol. She poured it in a Coke or a soft drink. I wouldn't say in high school I was a big drinker. Even though my best friend gave me a drink when I was 14, that didn't lead me to drinking on a routine basis. As circumstances had it, I attended 3 different schools. My 4 years of high school, we had moved when I started high school, and 9th grade was still in junior high. And then I started high school, and then we moved again my senior year. So I went to 3 different schools, but that didn't cause me to drink. But I graduated high school at 17, and my older sisters were in college, and so they were drinking. By now we were living in Tennessee, and no bar ever carded you. I do not even know what the drinking age was. I believe it was maybe 19, but I was 17 and had no issue getting alcohol. So I would go out with my sisters or sister drinking. And we were even pulled over one time when her roommate was driving, probably drunk. We were pulled over by the police, and he just let us go. That still shocks me to this day that we were on the interstate and could have died in an accident. He just let us go. So I had issues with drinking in college. I did start bleeding from drinking, which is one of the side effects of drinking. Your stomach can bleed. And I don't even think I drank that much. I think just as much as 1 drink. Just like I gain 1 pound when I eat a meal out. So then I think at that point I switched to maybe wine, blush wine, or beer, or I don't really remember. So I drank a little bit, and then when I graduated, I didn't really drink a lot. I was traveling for my job, and occasionally there might be a bar in the hotel. Rarely, because we stayed in the motels where you drove up to your room. So then the rare occasion there was a bar. I do remember going to the bar, and I don't remember what town it was in, but it was a hub for some airport because it was packed with pilots. And I remember one pilot saying at 10 o'clock, I have to go back to my room because we can't be seen drinking. We're not allowed to drink so many hours before the flight. But he was going back to his room to continue drinking. And I thought, that's just not right. I don't want to fly on that plane. Also, when I was babysitting in college for a doctor, and often he'd have other doctors over who would be drinking heavily. And I remember one doctor saying he had to have surgery. He was having surgery, or he was doing surgery early in the morning, and he was drinking heavily. Again, a little scary. Once I gave birth to my son, I drank a little bit in the beginning, but really drank less and less as the busyness of motherhood overtook. And drinking was not as popular then. We were living in Tennessee, and we were living again in Tennessee. We had been in South Carolina. We moved to Tennessee. And I don't remember drinking being pushed from the other moms. I mean, not like today where they talk about mommy's reward or mommy's wine or mommy's sippy cup. They make all these jokes with promoting wine drinking among moms. This is your reward for taking care of your child. I probably drank the least the first 10 to 15 years of my children's lives. You were so busy, and drinking was not really pushed as a big issue then. And then when I did get a second job in South Carolina, I worked for a Fortune 500 company that was headquartered in Pittsburgh, and we were required to go for training in Pittsburgh, maybe twice a year or something. And we were required to say what alcohol we wanted to drink. We could not say we don't drink. You were required to say what alcohol you wanted bought for your purpose. And they watched you, that you drank. It was like, I mean, you think of that today, I think it's amazing that you had so much peer pressure from a Fortune 500 company pushing for you to drink. And even one time I was an auditor and we got an email that another auditor, not in our office, but in another, maybe the Pittsburgh office, had died at lunch because he drank so much. He was in the back seat vomiting and whatever. He passed away from over drinking. Even at that point, they still encouraged us to drink. And if you didn't, you were marked as whatever, not a team player or something. It was pretty much forced on you. Fast forward, I remember Steve worked for companies that were often reorganized, restructured, and he would go down to unemployment after losing his job. And they'd always give us a paper about do not drink because now you can't afford to drink. And really, it's not a good idea. And we didn't drink a lot then. I would say after the Great Recession, and actually when I started teaching, I'd say I probably drank the most when I was teaching, which is kind of surprising because as an auditor and traveling, and the stress of traveling, being in strange offices and hotel rooms didn't lead me to drink, but teaching, which you can watch a million videos on the stresses of teaching, why people leave. Extremely stressful. So I just remember right when the pandemic hit, I was reaching my limit. I had been in the classroom, I think about 10 years as a long-term sub. That meant I went from school to school, from long-term job to long-term job. I would maybe do 6 weeks to 12 weeks in the classroom. You're brought in the middle of the year with no training. Supposedly the lesson plans are there, but they're often unclear or vaguely written. The person was going on maternity leave or had emergency surgery. It was pretty stressed, so they weren't the best of lesson plans. Kids were out of control, and I remember when the pandemic hit, I was in a bad situation because this school didn't want to pay for a long-term sub. So I was like their 4th or 5th sub. And it was an absolute nightmare. The kids had learned it was just a play day. Just an absolute nightmare. And prior to this, I had been in a high school, and this was a high school that didn't allow cell phones. And that was the reason I subbed there, because they did not allow cell phones. And so kids would be on their phones before school started, and then I'd say, okay, put your phones away. And they usually complied, but one girl refused to comply. And when I asked her to put away, she grabbed one of the Chromebooks and somehow communicated with the teacher. I think she texted her. Well, the point is, the teacher had given all the kids her personal cell phone number, but didn't even give it to me. And the girl texted the teacher, and the teacher said, you can be on your phone or whatever. She shoved it in my face and said, see, I'm allowed on my phone. Totally disrespectful. I felt so threatened. I felt humiliated by the teacher and threatened by the student. And I thought, I don't think I'm going to be lasting much longer in schools. It's bad enough the students don't respect me. Administration doesn't respect you, and the teachers don't respect you. I always wonder to this day if that changed after the pandemic, when they had such a struggle to get subs, if teachers ever changed their attitude and respected subs. I know teachers aren't respected. They complain about that all the time. But when teachers don't respect subs, and subs are the ones who come in when they're throwing up, have the flu, their child is sick, an emergency thing, they come in at the last minute, not knowing what's going on, have the class at their absolute worst behavior ever, and you do that day after day. And to have a teacher not respect you, well, I knew my days were numbered. For me, I knew I wasn't going to be able to deal with this much more. So after that, and then the long-term sub at the middle school, then the pandemic hit, and everything was shut down. I had no income. Even though I was entitled to unemployment, the school somehow put a stop to it by putting the wrong name or birthday or something. Unemployment said I was entitled to unemployment, but I never received a penny. So I was at home with no income, totally unexpected. And I got sick. Now, my stomach had been hurting me for about 6 months, and I was ignoring it because I was working probably 60 hours a week. When you're a long-term sub and you had to figure out what's going on in the middle of the year, you might have to tweak the lesson plans. You might have to make copies. Some of the lesson plans would say, today, play this game. Okay, where's the game? You have to take this book to the copier and make 30 copies and laminate them. That was the lesson plan, and that was often the case. I was like, really? This is the lesson plan? Make a game? So you didn't get a day off, or you didn't get paid. If you got sick, you didn't get paid. So I ignored my stomach pains. But when COVID came along, when the pandemic started, I got sick and thought I had COVID. So I went to the doctor. To this day, I don't know if it was COVID, but for some reason they took my blood. I don't know why. They had no COVID. There were no COVID tests available, but they took my blood. And it came back that my liver enzymes were off the chart. They were way abnormal. Now, I don't really know if it was an infection or drinking, but it did scare me enough to stop drinking. And I stopped drinking for a couple months, and then they did more blood work, and my liver was fine. I'm like, oh, cool, my liver's back to normal. I can drink again. And I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I don't even know for sure if I drank on a daily basis. I do know I was drinking, we had discovered Tennessee whiskey, a caramel. I'm a sugar addict. It was very sweet. And I know I didn't measure the shots, so who knows? It was 1, 2, or 3 shots. I have no idea. Now I know that if you drink 35 ounces or more in a week, you have a problem as a woman. Well, a shot is 1.5 ounces. If I was just pouring it into my glass, could have been 2 to 4 to 6 ounces. I have no idea. I have no idea. And then if I had a second drink, it was a big bottle of whiskey, so it did last a while. But a glass of wine is considered to be 4 ounces. And I know I fell for that when they kept saying, you're much healthier drinking 1 glass a day than to not drink at all. I thought a glass of wine was 8 ounces. I might have had blush wine. Nobody said a glass is 4 ounces. Nobody said. So prior to this, I remember when we had first moved to Georgia, Bunko was very big in the area, and every woman would bring maybe a bottle of wine. And I don't think I drank a lot of wine, so I might have brought, I don't really know. Maybe I brought beer. I don't really know what I brought. I don't remember. But I remember being so turned off that everybody was drinking so heavily that I was the first one to drop out. And then when Halloween rolled around, my kids were too old, really, for trick-or-treating, but all the young moms would pull the wagon, the liquor wagon, a wagon, not their kids. They were pulling the liquor, and all big group of parents would get together and they'd be drinking heavily as their kids went door to door. And I remember thinking, that's kind of sad. One of the few times you're spending with your children, you're drinking. I mean, my group or generation didn't drink with Halloween. Like I said, I didn't feel the pressure from other moms. But by now, when we had come back to Georgia, there was all the pressures of, Mom, you deserve a drink, you deserve wine. I had started hearing about the alcoholic moms who nobody even knew she drank because she drank in quiet. She drank at home alone. And anyway, one of the couples from Bunko had a party at their house, and we went over there, and they had Jell-O shots, and they were pushing, and we were probably the oldest people. Most people were in their 40s, we were in our 50s. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing these Jell-O shots, which we had a few. We had never had that before. And there wasn't a lot of food. This couple we knew, they didn't have any food in their house. We used to take care of their daughter after school sometimes, and she'd come over and eat us out of house and home because they had no food. And I didn't really think that they were alcoholics. We thought maybe the woman was because she would act goofy and silly. Well, it turns out a few years later, the husband actually died from alcoholism, and that just blew us away. We had no idea that he was an alcoholic, let alone was going to die from this. Fast forward a couple more years, the school I was subbing at, a teacher died, which was a shock. I think he was 50, and I think she was in her late 40s. Now, I did question a few things about this teacher. I never thought she was an alcoholic, but I would see her leave her class alone, and I would see her come in at the last minute in the morning, and I knew because I was working around her class or something. I was called in to sub I was at the school subbing in another class when they yanked me to her classroom for an emergency job. And I mean, I guess probably all the other teachers knew she was an alcoholic, but I had no idea. I was shocked by her death, and later ran into another teacher at the mall, and she told me it was alcoholism. So that's when I really realized, I mean, you don't really think that it can kill you. It's so promoted, so ingrained in our society. It's everywhere you go. My grandfather was an alcoholic, but it was never discussed. He died when my father was 19. So his alcoholism was not discussed. You would say he didn't die from alcoholism because he died from lung cancer. But alcohol leads to cancer as well as many other illnesses. So it probably had a big bearing on his death, because I think he was 63 when he died. It influenced my father's upbringing, which influenced our upbringing. But luckily my parents only drank maybe once a week. Once my mother passed away, my father drank probably once a week again, but towards the end of his life, he just gave it up. We never knew why. Just one day he gave up drinking totally. He never told us why. He never said the doctor said to stop. If he thought he was drinking too much, being isolated or alone, because often as you are aging, you do get lonely, you're alone. And like I said, if you are drinking, you don't know, unless you're proportioning it, just like food, you don't know how much you're drinking. I mean, even if unless you monitor maybe the cans or whatever. When our son was first born and we moved to Tennessee, our neighbor across the street was a really large young woman. And one day she had me over and I saw a wedding picture, and there was this very thin woman. She'd only been married a short time, and she said, "That's me." And I was like, "That's you." I mean, she had gained, I think, 50 to 100 pounds in 2 years. Well, it turns out her husband was an alcoholic. She said he was a functioning alcoholic. He drank 6 to 12 cans of beer a night, but still held a job. Never left the house, drank at home, so people didn't know he was an alcoholic. But obviously she knew, because she had gained 50 to 100 pounds and was miserable. That was shocking. I mean, I never even saw the husband or met him, because he was always in the house drinking. I don't remember who cut their grass. But so I know I've been influenced through the years by seeing people drink. And then a year and a half ago, my cousin died, and that was just a shock. His parents, again, like my parents, maybe drank once a week. You know, once a week, you celebrated, you had fun, whatever. Now, my cousin was fit, trim, wealthy. He had inherited a lot of money from his other side. He played tennis. He had good jobs. He had more money than he could ever spend from his other side that he had inherited. We thought he was happy, but at the funeral, I did not get to go. But my sister said that they talked about he has his own beer tap in his house. And I remember thinking, well, if you have your own beer tap, do you know how much you're drinking? Do you monitor it? If you just start filling cup after cup, it's like eating that bag of chips. You wouldn't really have a way. So he died in his sleep of a heart issue. Did drinking affect it? We don't know. We don't know. It's one of my greatest questions. Was he an alcoholic? I mean, people would all say no, because people they don't want to label people. They don't want to say he was an alcoholic or had a problem. But I just think if you have your own beer tap, you might be drinking more than you realize. Just like when I made a video on losing weight, I showed how I had to proportion our snacks because we would eat huge amounts. We started eating a lot of nuts for our snacks, and I put them in individual containers because you would eat the whole bag without even knowing it. So that's what I kind of think about drinking, that you might drink quite a bit without even knowing it. Now, just recently in April, my other cousin died, and he had cirrhosis as well as congestive heart failure. I think he was an alcoholic, but again, people don't want to put that label. They don't want to say he was an alcoholic. They might say, oh, he was a heavy drinker. Like saying he's an alcoholic is bad, but a heavy drinker is good. I don't know. Steve never was much of a drinker. So when I gave it up, he gave it up too. He always liked food more than alcohol. And you have to eat to live, but you don't have to drink to live. So anyway, let's go back to that time period. I gave it up for a few months. And then when it came back, my daughter one night came over and said, well, you can drink now. Your liver's fine. I was like, yeah, I guess I can. So I started drinking again. I drank less than I had in the past, but I did start drinking again. Then fast forward to, we moved into this house. I was doing yard work, and I was lifting 40-pound bags of mulch, which was, I never could lift that before. So I was pulling muscles, and I had a big pain right here, which I went to the doctor saying, I think this pain is from lifting 40-pound bags of mulch. Well, she had a student trainer, and she let him assess me while she was seeing another patient. And he said, you know, I think I'm going to assess you like the lady earlier today. She was anxious, so I think I'm giving you anxiety pills. I'm like, well, I'm here for a pulled muscle. I don't think it's anxiety. And so the doctor came in, stood by his diagnosis, even though he was a student. And she said, you know, anxiety hurts. Like you've heard depression hurts, anxiety hurts. So I'm putting you on anxiety pills. And I was like, doctors are good at convincing you. You know, they're good at convincing you that, no, it was not this pulled muscle from lifting 40 pounds that I shouldn't have been lifting. But now I'm anxious and need a pill every single day, even though I didn't feel anxious. And I know I've had anxiety, so I know what it feels like to be anxious. But I felt pretty sure it was a pulled muscle. Everybody is anxious. It's the pandemic. Maybe I am too. Went to the pharmacy to fill the prescription, and he said, oh, and I asked the doctor when she wrote it, I said, but I can't drink, right? She said, oh, yeah, you could drink. Because I know with anxiety pills, you're not supposed to drink. Oh, you can drink. Yeah, that's fine. I also know that I went to a aging expo once, and a pharmacist spoke, and he said, don't ever ask doctors about pills. They don't know anything. You need to talk to the pharmacist. Pharmacists are trained in medications. Doctors write the prescriptions, but they don't really know. I mean, seems a little disrespectful, but the pharmacist gave me the prescription and it had a big label slapped on the bottle, do not drink. And I said, this is do not drink. My doctor told me I can drink. He goes, I'm not going to tell you what to do. He was quite angry. Like maybe people had fought him on this quite a bit. He said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You do whatever you want to do. You're not supposed to drink, but if you want to drink, then drink. I was like, whoa. That was Thanksgiving of 2.5 years ago. And I was like, well, I have to choose. So I'm on anxiety pills or drinking. And first of all, I didn't even think I was anxious, but it was Thanksgiving, and now everybody's anxious at Thanksgiving. So I said, I guess I'm going to give up drinking. I'm going to take the anxiety pills. Well, I never liked how anxiety pills made me feel. I tried to use diet and exercise to control my anxiety. So I quit taking the anxiety pills within a month's time, but I decided that I was going to not take up drinking. I decided that it had too many effects on parts of my body that couldn't be good, and so I never went back to drinking. Now, it's cost me relationships because a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with me since I don't drink. I've been told I'm a boring person now. I think that's funny that if you drink, you're not boring, but if you don't drink, you're boring. I think I could be interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting people. I mean, a lot of people on YouTube. I mean, are you really interesting for drinking? I don't know. But it's cost relationships. But I've decided to choose me over the relationship. I didn't end the relationship. I can still have a relationship with people. They can still drink. I don't mind if other people are drinking as long as I'm not driving in a car with them. I don't care if they're drinking. And one reason, I know people think they could drink 1 or 2 drinks and then drive. Steve has not done a video on this, but he had a serious car accident at 17 where he almost died. He was not drinking, the driver was not drinking, but he was in a Volkswagen Bug that the steering column broke and they were stopped in the road and they were fine, they had no injuries. And then some driver came along around a curve and hit them. And the story goes, now Steve was in a coma, so he doesn't know for sure. But the story was that the driver had 1 drink. So they had to sue him to get Steve's hospital bills covered. Maybe he had more than 1 drink, I don't know. But when you're in an accident and you just have 1 drink, he was charged as being at fault. Changed Steve's life forever. And one day I've told him I want him to make a video because it's impacted his life so much, that serious accident where he was in a coma and he was in the hospital for a year of his life. But that also encouraged us not to drink and drive from that experience. And if other people drink, I don't have an issue. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. I can drink once in a while if I want to. However, with sleep apnea, it does make it worse. It does relax these muscles in your throat, which are already weak. So it makes your sleep apnea worse, which contributes to getting diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. So I'm weighing the cost of drinking versus health, and I'm choosing health as doctor's appointments and testing is very costly, and I want to live as long as possible to be around for my grandson. So that's why I don't drink. There was dry January, and some young people are giving up drinking, but as a whole, it's so ingrained in everything we do. I mean, everything. When Nextdoor app, one woman went on Nextdoor app one day and said, I need a friend. I've lived here for years and I don't know anyone. And she got 1,000 responses of people who needed a friend, who were lonely. And they said, let's have an outing. And so they started planning outings, and they were all centered around alcohol at bars, restaurants, wine tasting. So yeah, I didn't go ahead and sign up. I'm looking for a friend to exercise, walk, to help keep me healthy, talk, whatever. Like I said, if you want to drink and it doesn't affect me, you don't kill anybody in the car, or you don't hit anybody in the car, or neglect your children, or hurt your body. It doesn't affect me if you drink. So you tell me. Have you considered giving up drinking? Is drinking a problem? Comment below and let me know. And check out our other videos as we talk about so many different issues. I mean, I know we are aging, so we tend to have issues for aging people, as it's our life. And I find you do different things as you get older. We have more of the flowers that we never had before. Travel a little more. We are hiking still. Dealing with our grandchild, the changing world, the rapidly changing world, which is enough to make anyone drink. Every day, it's a whole new world with a whole new set of vocabulary words that if you don't know them, you are ashamed. It's a different world. It is very different. I just don't remember growing up where very many people were having drinking problems, or drinking on a daily basis, or where it was promoted, or where I just don't remember the way it is today, where you see so many people drinking, having car accidents. And I know there's a loneliness epidemic, I know that. But I wish we could find some non-drinking activities. When Steve and I went to Charlotte, we rode the Funny Bus, which we wanted to ride it for 2 reasons. One, to see Charlotte. It was pretty affordable, and it took you through Charlotte. That was one. And 2, it was a comedian. So we thought, what fun to see Charlotte and hear a comedian at the same time. It was like 3 in the afternoon, but they allowed you to bring beer and wine. we were the only ones on that bus not drinking, except for the driver, I hope, and the comedian. Now, the comedian would go around and ask you about your personal life because she wanted to use you as the butt of her jokes. And Steve, for whatever reason, didn't want to participate. We were the oldest ones on the bus and the only ones not drinking. So he made up some stuff that we had just gotten married to be funny. And ironically, I don't wear my wedding ring because I had lost 50 pounds and it doesn't fit my fingers anymore. So I don't know, kind of looked like we just got married. And I think he doesn't wear his anymore either because he had lost weight. So later we stopped at a bar. I didn't know, halfway through the trip, they stopped at a bar so you could go to the restroom. And he told her, no, really, we're sober. We've been sober for 2 years or whatever it was. And she's like, oh, and I said, yeah, every activity centers around alcohol. And she goes, that's what you feel now because you're still new in your journey, but really it doesn't. And I mean, we still have alcohol in our house, which has been untouched for 2.5 years. So I don't have an issue with not touching it. It was just ironic that she said, no, you just see alcohol everywhere you go because you're an alcoholic. And I was like, okay. A lot of people give it up for health reasons. They're not alcoholics. It's kind of a new concept, I guess. Kind of a new concept to give it up for health reasons. I hope you enjoyed this. Give us a thumbs up and look for our other topics. If this one wasn't interesting to you, we have so much more, and we are still looking for a puppy. By June, we hope to have bought our puppy. She's another deterrent to not drink. You're stressed out? We're hoping this puppy's going to help, or is she going to create more stress? I don't know. Training her, I'm a little nervous about training her and how much sleep I'm going to be losing with training her, but we're getting a more intelligent dog. Steve picked the breed. I don't know. That's what we're looking for, but we are still looking at the humane societies. We just don't want to get a big dog. As we're aging, we want to get a smaller dog, and they're harder to find at humane societies. Plus, they have to approve you and your dog. They have to approve Sierra, and Sierra's not a friendly dog with other dogs. Overall, she's not real friendly. She's a worker, herding dog. So I wouldn't say she's a real friendly dog. So it's been a challenge, but we're going to get one. By June, we are for sure getting a puppy. So look for that. And we've renamed her Sammy. So we can't wait till she joins our family. Till I see you again, take it easy.